We have an official timetable after Tyler Herro surgery, but the Heat might be being too optimistic. We'll tell you why on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. David, we have a lot to get to today. We are talking all things Tyler Herro. We did cover the news initially when it was breaking on Friday morning. We have more information regarding Tyler Herro since then, so we're going to get to all of it now, including when we realistically expect him to play again and the impact that this has on Miami's playoff chances. But let's start with what we know, and I thought we could do this FAQ style just to make sure that we cover all of our bases. So I have a list of the questions that people are asking us, basically since we talked about this on Friday. Let's just answer them, and that's how we're going to kind of go through this thing. So the first one is, what's the official timeline? And I'll just start with reading the Heat's official statement. The Miami Heat announced that Tyler Herro underwent successful surgery today to alleviate posterior impingement syndrome in his left ankle. The 90-minute procedure was performed by blah, 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 blah in Miami. Herro is expected to miss around 8 weeks. So 8 weeks. That's the official timeline that the Miami Heat announced on Friday. That would put his return at like the first or second week of November, which doesn't sound horrible. When you and I, David, talked on Friday, it was very much like, we don't know when he's going to come back. We have no idea what this procedure entails in terms of rehab and what the realistic timeline is. But the Heat are saying 8 weeks, which when I saw 8 weeks, I don't know about you, David, I was like, oh, that's less than what I thought they were going to say.
Well, 8 weeks, I mean, that's a significant chunk of change. And at the same time, that doesn't mean he's going to return to anywhere close to full strength, even if he does come back.
Yeah.
So we're looking at him coming back. And at the same time, as we've heard Eric Spoelstra say a number of times when a player returns, it's like, well, there's a different matter of him being able to have some contact work and be able to go full 5-on-5 and then be able to get into game shape, and then even just incorporating him into the lineup. And so there's going to be an additional amount of time. Being able to return to active duty in 8 weeks is one thing. Being able to put yourself back in the shape that you should have been to start the season off, that's a completely different story. So that could take even an additional chunk of time.
Yeah, and Herro expected to miss around 8 weeks. I guess you would assume that means he's going to miss 8 weeks of games, but it can also just mean he's going to miss 8 weeks of basketball activities and then come back in 8 weeks and then start maybe ramping up into what you're talking about there, which is basketball shape. So, and all these things are usually, you might as well just put an ish at the end of everything. 8-ish weeks, right? Like you and I know that. Like whenever you hear this stuff, it's 8-ish, right? It could be 7, it could be 9, right? 8-ish. But we're going to keep going. I do think that might be a slight too optimistic, and I'll tell you why here in a second, but let's keep going with what else we know. It was reported as an ankle and foot injury, left ankle, left foot injury. It is, the Heat announced that it is specifically posterior impingement syndrome. So what is posterior impingement syndrome? It's when the tissues at the back of the ankle are compressed between the ankle bone and the heel bone, at least according to Google. That's what that says. So the pain that Tyler Herro has been feeling is in the back of his ankle. So there's pain and tenderness in the back of that ankle. Obviously, that impacts flexion. It impacts landing on that foot for run and jump athletes. That's obviously a big deal. So that's what he's dealing with right now. Why get the surgery now as opposed to immediately after the season? This was something that we were asked a lot about following Friday's episode. Herro's ankle has been bothering him since the offseason. They attempted PRP injections, cortisone, other solutions before they decided that the surgery was necessary. And then they decided to get the surgery. We talked about this on Friday. People immediately asked, well, why not get the surgery sooner so that this doesn't infringe on the start of the season? Talking to people, nobody is saying exactly when this started bothering Tyler Herro. But my understanding is that this is something that started bothering him in the offseason. So people are asking, oh, well, he should have had the surgery right after the season. This wasn't bothering him right after the season. There would be no point to go under a knife right after the season when nothing was bothering him. So it wouldn't have made sense to have surgery right after the season. This wasn't a situation where it was Jason Tatum suffering an Achilles tear in the playoffs, and then you get surgery as soon as possible to try to ramp up his, recovery as soon as possible. No, this had started festering and bothering him in the middle of the summer at some point. Again, nobody's saying really exactly when, and with these kind of things, it's hard to know exactly when this all started. But
Right.
obviously something, I'm assuming, not reporting, I'm just assuming it happened during a workout of some kind, right? And it slowly started to build and it became an issue. This is also talking to people, this kind of surgery is usually a last option. And it's a last option, not because it's some sort of like dire surgery. It's actually kind of considered a routine surgery. It's not like a big deal surgery, but it's not uncommon for professional athletes to try the injections and the other forms of rehab before undergoing the surgery part of this. So the timing is unfortunate, but they also didn't wait
Right.
any longer. So I wanted to clarify that in terms of like, why didn't Tyler Herro just do this right away? This wasn't something that was bothering him in the playoff series against Cleveland, right? This was something that just sort of cropped up during the summer. I don't know if you have anything else.
I think it's important because we did see a lot of we did see a lot of blowback from fans, even to the point where there are some conspiracy theorists that the Heat medical staff might have been doing this on purpose in order to be able to accelerate the tank or something like that. He was trying to avoid surgery. This isn't Shaquille O'Neal famously with the Lakers waiting to get surgery for as long as possible until the start of the season and having Phil Jackson publicly complain, well, why didn't he do this sooner? This is working together with the team and saying, we're trying this, we've tried this, it's not going away, it's going to get worse. What do we do now? Let's go to surgery because that accelerates the time frame for his return, and hopefully he'll come back from this pain and injury free. There was
That's
no
the
avoidance,
hope, right?
nothing purposeful. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So this is a positive thing that he's getting this now. I know a lot of people are seeing it somewhat negatively. You're saying that this is going to be some kind of part of a willful ignorance on his part to do it sooner. But no, he was trying to avoid it and continue with his workouts in the hope that it would go away, as many people do. They go, this is a last resort. I don't necessarily want to go this route. But no, unfortunately, the pain was so much and unbearable, and he just wanted to get rid of it and be injury free. And so that's why he had to eventually elect surgery.
It's one of these things too, where your ankle starts to hurt, and that's not new for athletes. Like when you land and the bottom of your feet hurts, that's not new for basketball players. So for a while, he's like, oh, this just kind of hurts like it usually does. And then after a while, like, this kind of hurts more than it usually does. And this kind of hurts longer than it usually does. And then you start kind of undergoing testing and stuff like that. So that's why this isn't like, oh, I tore my Achilles, I know right away, or I tore my ACL, I know right away. Let's get under. It's also not nearly that surgery, right? We're not talking about an Achilles tendon. So I'm sorry I keep bringing that up, but like, I was just trying to use examples. To your point too, why it's used like Tyler Herro and the Heat working in tandem on this. The part I yada-yada'd over from the Heat statement, it's Dr. Thomas San Giovanni was assisted by Heat team physicians, blah 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 and blah blah, yeah, at the Doctors Hospital Surgery Center in Miami. So yes, the doctor that Tyler Herro and his representation found was also helped found by the Miami Heat, and this was all done in collaboration. So in terms of conspiracy theories about whether or not their tank is on, or if this has anything to do with extension talks or anything like that, nope. No. I'll leave it there. Is he expected to make a full recovery? Yes, they are hoping that this solves the problem. It's a pain problem that it alleviates the issue going forward. The expectation with this kind of procedure is it's not one of those, oh, is he going to be 90% of what he used to be? This is a pain tolerance issue. The deal is that you undergo this procedure, it doesn't hurt as much, and you can just sort of recover. It's not, in other words, it's not a structural issue, which is when you get into the ACLs, the MCLs, the Achilles, and then you have that question of, can you return to what you used to be? The idea here is you have the surgery, you're fine afterwards. We talked about this Friday, but just kind of going along with this FAQ kind of theme, who starts in his place, who needs to step up? Davion Mitchell, you and I agreed on Friday, probably has the inside track into starting. I think this means that Drew Smith, who is hopeful to be back by training camp, there might be more of a role for him from the outset. I think Pelle Larsson, who we saw, David, on the ball quite a bit for Eurobasket. I'll be very interested to see what the Heat allow him to do in training camp and in preseason. Kasparas Jakubonis, who they drafted in the first round in June, there might be more opportunities for him earlier in the season where it looked like he might be looking at a G League route early in the year. And then obviously there's the Terry Rozier part of this too. Does this mean Terry Rozier will play? We'll talk about that. Plus, the concern that I have over this 8-week timeline, I think it might be a little bit too optimistic. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors, each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I throw these in my work bag for when I need a boost late at night while watching games or before a workout. I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later on. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat. Hey, before we get to the issue I have with the timetable here, David, the other question that we get quite a bit, does this mean Terry Rozier is going to play? And it's really interesting because we're getting reporting over and over from national outlets, and it's something that, David, you and I have talked about quite a bit on this show, is that the Heat are looking to move on from Terry Rozier before they're looking to get him on the court. Right now, there's a possibility that Terry Rozier can have a bounce-back season. When I say they're looking to move on from Terry Rozier, as we've said 100 times on the show, it doesn't mean that they're trying to attach assets. It doesn't mean that we got to get off of him or else they're under the luxury tax. It's not like this dire situation, but they would rather use him in terms of facilitating another trade or perhaps facilitating another roster spot for a helpful player before that they really play him. A big part of this is the fact that about $1.5 million of his full contract is not guaranteed. And if they waive him, they can open up that $1.5 million and then create enough space to sign a veteran to a veteran minimum to the 15-man roster. But if he were to play and, for instance, David, get hurt in the first game of the season, then that contract becomes fully guaranteed. And that option for Miami vanishes. And that would be a problem for the Heat in terms of them wanting to maintain their flexibility with the salary cap. So does this mean Terry Rozier will play? I think the way that they could operate, they'll look at what he has in training camp. But if it becomes really evident that last season feels like that's going to be the norm as opposed to not the norm, I think in other words, there's a lot riding on training camp for Terry Rozier, David.
Absolutely. They're under no obligation to play him. This isn't somebody that they're invested in. He's not tied to any particular kind of hope that would force them to say, we've got to give him an extended look. Like last year, I mean, we argued on this show about why Erik Spoelstra was playing him last year when there was no obligation to do so. And maybe even then the rationale was, well, at least you want to try to showcase what he's capable of in the hopes of maybe finding a potential taker. But we know that market's dried up now. So they played him last year when they were under no obligation to do so for any other reason than to showcase him and be like, anybody want to slightly use Terry Rozier to take off our hands? But now that there's no obligation, he's on the roster. I think everybody knows what he's capable of. It's not going to improve his value to any significant degree. They're not going to suddenly convince some team, you know what, the missing piece to our title contention is a 30% shooter from the field who's past his prime. So this is not, they're not going to try to do anything. Like at this point, somebody's going to either take him off their hands by February because he's an expiring contract in order to provide some salary cap relief, or because they're trying to move a larger salary of their own, or the Heat are frankly going to have to eat the cost of his contract. It's the final year, and that's it. We've heard reporting, I believe, from Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald that they've inquired into other potential trades, that they've looked at potentially buying him out, and that Rozier and his camp said, no, that's not necessary. I'd rather take the 20-something million that we're owed this year, because there aren't a lot of teams knocking on his door, even for a minimum contract, which is probably all he would get at this point in time. So there's really no reason for either party to move on at this point. And the hope, I think, for both is that he can rehabilitate his image around the league and say, look, no, I can still play at a fairly decent level, even if it wasn't what I was once capable of. I don't know that Terry Rozier ever had a high value around the league, aside from maybe his best season as a pro, his most consistent season, which is when Miami made the trade for him in the first place, because they had to move on from Kyle Lowry, who was producing nothing. And so that's why they were willing to include the first round pick at that point. He was viewed at that point in time as a missing piece to their offense. It didn't quite work out that way. Now they're under no obligation. There's no need to play him. And it would be more of a detriment to what they're trying to build and accomplish. And in terms of money, he doesn't provide that much salary relief, where waiving him makes any sense. You're going to have to eat the cost, at the very least, eat the cost and hope that maybe he can play decently enough to earn that money.
Our next question here, is this return timetable too conservative? Is it too optimistic? What do we really make of this 8-week timetable? So again, official timetable is 8 weeks. This is from Jeff Stotts, who runs In Street Clothes, which is a great online database, breaks down all kinds of different injuries to pro athletes and things like that. So he is kind of the guy that you listen to when it comes to this stuff. And he tweeted in regards to the Tyler Herro surgery, the variance of return to play timelines following ankle surgery for impingement and other, I'm going to try my best here, debridements is high. 8 weeks seems a bit like a best case scenario, and I expect his recovery to be fluid. So I saw this. I did some poking around. I did some online research. I talked to some people. I also feel like the 8 weeks is pretty optimistic. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't make it an outright lie. I think it's optimistic. I want to go back to the press release. There's an important detail in here that I don't think is being talked about enough. The surgery was for posterior ankle impingement. You have two kinds of ankle impingements, posterior and anterior. Anterior is generally considered the less severe in terms of able to return. Posterior is the one that's typically associated with a longer timeline to come back. That's the one Tyler Herro has. Posterior, specifically what this means for Tyler Herro, it means that the pain is in the back of the leg, on the back of the ankle, as opposed to the front of the leg where it feels more similar to like shin splints or something, right? This is in the ankle. Hopefully, I don't have to use the word Achilles anymore to explain why any pain in the back of the ankle immediately sends up red flags for any player, team, physician, doctor, etc. Not saying that this is an Achilles concern or anything like that, but when you're dealing just with that general area, players tend to be as cautious as possible, unless you're Tyrese Halliburton trying to return for a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, right? Like this stuff, when you're talking about that area on the body, they tend to be as careful as possible. And again, I'll underline, this does not mean that the Achilles is a threat or in danger, or that this even can affect it. I'm just saying players tend to be careful with this spot of the body.
As they should. As they should. And look, neither of us medical professionals obviously here, but that doesn't stop a lot of people in today's climate from becoming medical professionals online anyway. But still,
you could have a professional online about anything.
The point being
Great.
that, I think just even from a rational point of view, like you could say Tyler doesn't have elite speed maybe, and it's not going to change all that much because of the pain. But what he does have is a certain level of shiftiness in order to thrive offensively. And that requires something that I think he is elite at, which is being able to change speeds quickly and be able to stop quickly, especially for his pull-up game. Those are essential parts of his offensive repertoire. And imagine how much more difficult that is to be able to change and stop on a dime in order to pull up for your jump shot when you've got this amount of pain in the back of your foot. That changes everything. So it's a severe enough injury, and I think we have to all consider it as such. Like, I don't think anybody wants this to happen. I think Tyler least of all. And so the idea is that he's going to be able to get this help now because he needs it, and he's going to return as quickly as possible because he wants something to prove. I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of leaned into this conspiracy idea a lot about what's going on and why Tyler is doing this and questioning his dedication and stuff like that. It's like, for a guy like Tyler, who has used that chip on his shoulder throughout his career, He wanted to go into the season to prove last year wasn't a fluke, but merely a foundational step for him to continue building his game on. And this is a detriment to that. And I think he's already tweeted something out, or I don't even know what social media outlet he did, but I think he's already looking forward to recovery so that he can continue to show
he said it a
that
few
he's
times,
a
right?
good player, and he wants to prove that.
Yeah, on Instagram, he posted, "I'm going to tear the league back down once I get off this weak bleep bed." And he posted it with his middle finger up from his hospital bed. So he's already expressing optimism. And look,
I mean,
yes, you could say that players do that, whatever. I love it, man. I'm here for it. I talk your bleep, dude. Like I love when players attack their surgery, attack their injuries like it's the enemy. And that's the feeling that I get from Tyler Herro. And it's when I say I'm a bit concerned that the 8-week timeline is a bit optimistic. I'm not saying it's unrealistic. I just think that that's probably the best case scenario here, because when you typically look at posterior ankle impingement surgery and the return to play after that, based on the database and the stuff that's out there, 10 to 16 weeks is the typical return time frame for this procedure. I mean, that's up to twice as long as what the Heat are saying in their statement. Now, that's the long range of things, and maybe that's for an older athlete, and maybe a more severe case of whatever this is. But the recovery can be slower due to the involvement of that part of the body, the soft tissue, the potential irritation of an important tendon, because that part of the body connects to basically the tendon that connects the big toe to the rest of your body. And again, run and jump athlete, you were talking about changing the direction, ability to stop on a dime and get to that floater and that pull up. Yeah, your big toe's used in all of that. Ask any professional athlete how important their big toe is. It's a big deal. So they tend to take a long time with this. 8 weeks on the faster end, 16 weeks at the higher end. I have not heard from anybody with the Heat that they are expecting 16 weeks. Let me be very clear about that. I'm just saying in terms of the database that we have or how long this takes across sports, all sports. 10 to 16 weeks. That's why I'm saying 8 weeks might be a bit optimistic here. If it's closer to 10, 11, just don't be shocked. But this is fluid, and it all depends, because it's a pain tolerance thing, on just how Tyler Herro feels coming back from this, right? And that's going to be a big part of that. And that's not something anybody can possibly know right now. You just know as you go through the steps of this rehab. But the surgery went well. It was a success from everything that we know. And the rehab begins today. So, how does this impact Miami's standing in the East? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization on your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Just use the code LOCKEDONNBA. So our last question here, David, how does this change Miami's standing in the East? I'm going to give you a list here. I'm going to tell you where I thought Miami was before the Tyler Herro injury. I'm going to tell you where I think they are after in the Eastern Conference standings. You tell me if you agree or not. So before, I had Cleveland and New York in a tier with themselves. I've got Atlanta, Orlando, and Detroit in kind of that next tier. So that's 5 teams that I feel like I would put them in Sharpie or in pen, making the playoffs, barring crazy injury, unfortunate luck. Cleveland, New York, Atlanta, Orlando, Detroit. Before the Tyler Herro injury, I had the Heat in the mix with the Pacers, the Bucks, and the 76ers, because who knows what to make of Philadelphia. They could be the best freaking team in the East. They could be the worst. So I just put them in there. So that's why I had Miami. I thought they were right there and had a legit chance to be one of the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference. But now that Tyler Herro is going to miss between, I think, 15 and 20 games now, it sounds like. I think that this moves the Heat down a notch. So now I have it Cleveland, New York, Atlanta, Orlando, Detroit as my top 5. I've got Indiana, Milwaukee, and like Philadelphia-ish in that next tier. And now I have Miami going down a tier with Boston, Toronto, and Chicago. I think this puts the Heat in that tier, which is more of a play-in tier. It's not to say that it's impossible for the Heat to be in the top 6. Maybe there's injuries above them in the standings. Maybe the Heat just catch a wild hair and go on a run here or something like that. But I think just looking at these teams on paper right now, without Tyler Herro for 15 to 20 games, I think it just moves Miami down a notch, which still potentially a playoff team, just a little bit harder to get there, David.
I'd have to agree. I think you can even make a case that Toronto would belong in that other tier above them in terms of alongside Milwaukee and Indiana. As far as the 6, 7, 8 teams in the Eastern Conference, I think they're better than that. But moreover, I think Miami's in a tough spot, and I've seen some optimistic approaches to it too. I'm actually kind of torn. I guess part of me wants to believe that maybe they'll be able to capture lightning in a bottle twice, similar to what they did during the 2023 finals run. But they had so many other players step up on top of the fact that they had Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and they were excellent throughout that playoff run. And I think that's kind of what's necessary for this team. So, okay, let me ask it this way. Let me reframe it. Is it possible that Tyler's absence allows Davion to thrive as the starting point guard and that other players, say Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Niko Jovic, etc., that they can kind of pick up the slack and allow their games to expand? Because now it's not just getting production from Tyler. And yes, those 3 players in particular, I think, were going to be expected to produce. But could Tyler's absence allow them to pick up the slack so considerably where they won't be as much of a drop-off? Because I want to think that's a possibility. And yet there's something kind of stopping me from saying that, because I know that this team doesn't have a star. They don't have anybody. Tyler is as close to the stars they're going to have on this team, and you're going to lose his 24-point per game production. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of torn. Part of me wants to be optimistic and say all these other players will step up and make up for his absence, but I think a more realistic part of me is saying no. With his absence, you're kind of screwed, because you were counting on all those players and that depth that kind of defined his team in the first place, and now their roles have changed, where they're going to be expected to do more than what they should have been able to, or what should have been expected to do to start the season.
It's an interesting question, and I understand maybe like, okay, let's find the silver lining of this. And I know where you're coming from, but I wouldn't view it. If anything, I'd say it cleans things up for Bam. Like, I'm less concerned. Like, depth pieces are going to be depth pieces. Like Pell Larson, Davion Mitchell, they're going to do what they do. Like, I don't know that I'm looking to give them more stuff on their plate. What I think maybe if there was a concern here is, to your point, there's no star. There's no clear-cut superstar on this roster. I don't know. If you polled our fans, who's the best player on the Heat, I don't think we're getting the same answer across the board.
No.
This clears things up for Bam to be that guy, right? There's no Bam sharing the ball with Tyler Herro. There's no two-man game. We talked about this on Friday. There's no chemistry on this team right now. You made the great point that, like, the guy that Bam has logged the most minutes with in that starting lineup right now is Kel'el freaking Ware, who just got here. So it's something that I think clears things up for Bam in terms of the pecking order of, hey, there's no Tyler Herro here to save this offense. It's got to be you, dude. And for Heat fans that want to see more aggressive Bam Adebayo, there's going to be a lot expected of him for these first 15 or 20 games. Now, maybe the bright side of this also is, well, the start of the schedule was pretty bad. It was pretty tough anyway. Maybe the Heat were always going to finish like these first 20 games under 500 or around 500 anyway. Maybe it doesn't really matter. And you're getting Tyler Herro for the run that really matters, which is when the schedule gets a little bit easier, right? 6 of Miami's first 8 games are on the road. 11 of their first 15 games are against playoff teams. They have a West Coast trip on the second week of the season, which is about a week before this optimistic timeline pegs Tyler Herro to make his potential return here. So maybe there's just like, hey, this team was it was going to be a rough go to start this thing anyway. Maybe to your point, David, this puts the role players in a little bit more of a position to try to get some run early in the season when maybe you can afford to do it against high-level competition, a great measuring stick. But I think maybe more than anything, it just clears things up for Bam to be that guy. So if anybody is under most pressure now, it's not Davion Mitchell. It's not Norm Powell even. I think it's Bam.
Yeah. That's a fair point. And I'd like to see him respond. I think this would be a great opportunity for him. And we've talked about him kind of taking ownership of this team from an emotional leadership standpoint, but now it's an opportunity for him to do so even from a productive standpoint, where he has to be the team's. He's never been in this spot before either. Like, he's never been asked to do this. He's never been expected to do this. He's played on teams that were led by other players early to start his career. And then now that since he became a full-time starter in 2019, this was Jimmy's team. And yeah, Bam's had his moments here and there, but this is really his team now. And it will be for the next 8 weeks.
Right.
So this
not for this long of a stretch, to your point, right? Like a game here or there,
yeah.
But not for weeks, not for the first 20 potential games of a season. Like for a full quarter of the season, it's going to be Bam's team. Frankly, I'm kind of like, I'm bummed out that Tyler Herro is hurt. I'm kind of excited to see how Bam responds to it, because we're going to answer a lot of our questions here, right? You've seen guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. in Memphis thrust into this position for, it feels like full seasons or darn near close to it, and rise up, right? And Jaren Jackson Jr., I think most people would consider a better player than Bam because he's made those offensive improvements over the last year or two, specifically having the ball in his hands, making things happen. We haven't really seen Bam take that sort of step up offensively with the ball in his hands, making plays for others, things like that. That is beyond just sort of the dribble handoff part of his game. So I think we are going to have to see it here. So pressure on everybody, maybe no more so than anybody on Bam. Let us know what you think, though, in the YouTube comments, what you think about Tyler Herro's injury. If we helped answer your questions with our FAQ on the Tyler Herro stuff here, I'm sure we'll dig into more of this story as the week goes on. We'll return to our 25 of 25 series as this week progresses. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day.